What's going on YouTube? So Hyundai has a very extensive lineup of crossovers, and right in between the Venue and the Tucson, they have the Hyundai Kona. This is the all-new generation of the Kona for 2024. And you may have already seen our full in-depth review of this Kona, but today we wanted to make a special video focused on the inline specifically. This is the most aggressive looking version of this all-new Kona, and we're gonna show you what you're gonna get for the money. So let's go ahead and take a dive. Now, inline mainly impacts the overall look of the vehicle. So let's start with the exterior design. Up here in the front, of course, the new generation has a totally different look. It's a lot more smoothed out and kind of EV inspired, as Hyundai puts it. But with the inline, you'll notice some more aggressive bits. So down here on your lower fascia, this is all gonna be finished in a nice gloss black instead of the other matte black plastic on other trim levels. You also notice down here at the bottom, it's a little bit more aggressively shaped. Now, things that don't change for the inline are the really cool lighting elements, such as the full-length light bar that's running across the top. Separated below that is going to be projector LED headlights. Those are actually standard on all of the trim levels. And this model does come with an incandescent turn signal, where the Limited is going to have an LED. Now, moving on to our wheels, we have 19-inch alloy wheels on the inline model. This design is looking familiar to me because it kind of reminds me of our Sonata inline. Really cool geometric shapes inside of this. And while I'm in this area, let's talk about the cladding. Kona has really thick cladding, but if you choose the inline model, this is actually going to be body colored. So this is going to be the trim for you if you don't like that thick cladding look on the other models. Now, of course, we've got the inline branding right there. We do have color contrast gloss mirrors as well, and all the gloss black elements really pop against this model's denim blue.
Now, this all-new Kona is going to be up about 5.7 inches over the previous generation, which you'll see in just a little bit does translate to a lot more interior space. Now, as far as other side design elements, of course, they have a lot of geometric shapes going on through here. Additionally, we do have some nice roof rails up at the top, but let's make our way around to the rear design, because this is where it gets wild, and I'm talking college spring break wild. I mean, the design on this thing is kind of insane, especially for a subcompact crossover. But I like that Hyundai takes those risks when it comes to the design. So let's go ahead and break down what you're going to get for the inline. Well, the biggest element that you're going to see right from the beginning is this spoiler up here. So we have the traditional spoiler that all Konas have down here, but then they add this extra spoiler above that. It's almost so aggressive, it reminds me of the Kona Inn. And then dropping down below that, we have an exposed wiper. We also have the full-length LED accent taillight going across the entire rear design. That makes it look very cohesive with the front. And then your actual taillight unit is integrated over here on the side. On this model, we do have an LED brake light. We're going to have an incandescent turn signal and reverse light, though. Now, dropping down, we're not done with the changes, because the inline makes this area a lot more aggressive. We have this really cool shape through here. The diffuser area is going to be very aggressive, and you're also going to get dual exposed exhaust outlets, which is something you don't find on any other Kona model. Now, when it comes to safety systems for the Kona inline, you are going to get all 4 of your active safety features as standard equipment. So that will even include stuff like adaptive cruise control with highway drive assist. Now, one thing you're going to be missing out on, though, from the limited trim is the smart park system. So do keep that in mind. But guys, that wraps up the bold and flashy exterior design, but there's a really cool interior inside. But before, if you're new here, we're brothers, and we've been reviewing cars since we were 12
and 16. We may be young, but we love cars.
And we'd love for you to subscribe to be a part of our Car Confections family. Let's learn a lot, have some fun with all the latest cars.
Now it's time to check out the interior. Just like with all Hyundai Kona models, you have a standard smart entry system. This is the brand's newest key fob, which is actually shaped to look like the Hyundai H. You do have remote start as well built into the fob. And to get inside, just grab behind the handle. That's going to unlock the door. Now take a look inside of the cabin. If you watch the limited review, you're going to notice there's quite a few differences visually in terms of this interior for the inline duty. The biggest thing is going to be the seats you see here. So we have a little bit of an aggressive seat going on because the inside is going to be a suede. We have the red color contrast stitch. We also have in branding up there at the top, and then the outside edge is going to be a leatherette. Now, just like the other models, you do still have 8-way power adjustment with 2-way lumbar. But let's go ahead and climb inside. I also almost forgot to mention that you do have aluminum pedals down there at the bottom. But let's go ahead and look at the overall cabin. Materials are pretty much going to be the same as the Limited, so we have a leatherette trim right here, as well as in the center section, hard touch plastic along the top. This part of the dashboard is going to be finished in kind of a rubberized texture, but you will notice these additional red accents throughout the cabin, just to give you that little pop of sporty flair. But let's go ahead and fire it up with the standard push button start. After we start it up, let's take a look at our gauge cluster. So one of the premium elements about this inline is that you do get the full digital gauge cluster. This is 12.3 inches and it is reconfigurable. So you got a couple different designs. For instance, if you go into sport mode there, you can see the graphics kind of change. One thing that's different from the Limited though is you don't have the blind spot camera system. So keep that in mind. Now as we pull back to the steering wheel, we have the newest Hyundai design. With the inline though, we have perforated leather here on the sides, color contrast stitching, and inline branding. Of course, the steering wheel itself is manual tilt and telescoping. Heating though is going to be reserved for just the Limited. Now, turning over here to our storage. This is one of the elements that doesn't change between the trims, and it is very impressive. With this new Kona, we have this large storage area that's kind of all one piece. If I remove that, you can see this section here is our center console. We have a divider which you can remove, which would allow you to even extend into this area. And then this has cup holders which can pop out on demand or pop in if you want to use that storage space for something else. In front of that, you have a wireless phone charging pad, and then you've got a huge storage shelf across the passenger side. Now that's made possible because we now have the new Hyundai electronic shifter. It's up here on the steering wheel. You're going to twist up for drive. You do have paddle shifters on the steering wheel, and twist down for reverse. When you go into reverse, this is what our traditional backup camera is going to look like. It does have guidelines and active trajectory. The 360 camera is going to be reserved for just the Limited trim level, and that also applies for the parking sensors as well. Now as we come down below, you got your 3-stage heated seats. Ventilated seats are a Limited exclusive, but we still do have the dual zone automatic climate on board. Very easy to use. I like that all these buttons are physical, and you even have full physical buttons for the audio system as well. Now, just like the Limited, this is going to come with the Bose sound system. I believe it has 8 speakers, and we'll go ahead and give it a sample right now. That's a quite nice audio system. Really fills up the cabin well. It's plenty of bass, and I appreciate that you don't have to get the fully loaded model to get it. Okay, this is really where I wanted to kind of focus the attention, was on this main display, because this is targeting, you know, a younger buyer, and younger buyers are really going to care about the technology that you have on board. You have a standard 12.3-inch display, not just on the inline, but actually on all of the trim levels, and that's the largest in the segment. Now, it's not just that though, it has additional functionality. So right now I'm running Android Auto. You also have Apple CarPlay. This is currently connected through a wired connection, but this new software, it allows Hyundai to have over-the-air updates. And they are planning into 2024 to have an over-the-air update which will give you wireless abilities even on the upper trim levels such as the inline and the Limited. The lower trim levels are actually going to already have wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay if you don't have navigation built into the system itself. No, that's a little confusing, but soon all the models will have wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, so that's something to rejoice about. Here's what the overall new software looks like. Very nice and responsive. I love the new graphics. This is our built-in navigation system as well. As you can see, just overall, so much more responsive than the previous generation. Now, as we rise above, we do have an auto-dimming mirror. The HomeLink remotes will just be on the Limited trim though. And we also have the sunroof. Interestingly, it does have a power sunshade. It does open up as well, and you have a pop-up wind buffer.
Now, sitting in the rear of the Kona inline, this all-new generation, like I said, gets a lot more spacious when it comes to the rear space as well as the cargo area. We're sitting at about 38 inches of both leg and headroom, which is up 3 inches over the previous generation model and does make it one of the most spacious in the segment. As far as for inline duty, you're going to have pretty good features when it comes to this model. So as you can see, we have vents right here in the middle. You do have a special little red accent. So I like that Hyundai's going through those details and really making sure that you feel like you're in the inline, even here in the rear seat. Additionally, we do have 2 USB ports below that. As far as the seats themselves, I do like the fact that we actually have the Alcantara and leatherette seat combo in the back. It's perforated, goes all through here. It's also perforated here in the middle seat and goes up halfway on the armrest. It's really the small details like that that I do certainly appreciate. We have a center armrest with 2 cup holders inside, and looking at the door trim, we have the same materials as the front with leatherette on most of it, and then you do have bottle storage down on the very bottom. And let's check out the cargo area. One of the things that you're going to be missing out on from the Limited is a power tailgate. So if that matters a lot to you, do keep that in mind. Now, as far as the space is concerned, back here we're looking at a little over 25 cubic feet behind the second row. If we fold the second row down, we're looking at about 63 cubic feet. That's also a massive improvement over the previous generation. It's about 33% more cargo capacity overall for this all-new Kona model. But that's pretty much going to be it for what we're going to talk about on this part of the video. Now we're going to go ahead and take it out on a drive and see what's different for this inline out on the road and get out of this wind. Lord, I think I'm about to blow away. Well guys, we're behind the wheel of the inline Kona, and we're about to take off and show you what's under the hood with this model, as well as talk about a lot of different things, as you can see on the screen right now, including getting our sound level reading. So let's go ahead and see what this Kona inline is all about. Not bad.
Not bad, yeah. There's a 60-mile-an-hour acceleration. We're feeling the power of in.
Yeah. Well,
in reality,
yeah.
The inline actually does have the same engine as the Limited trim level, but it is an up-level engine from your lower 2 trim levels, the SE and the SEL. This is a 1.6-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. It's making 190 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque.
The torque is really quite impressive.
Right, I mean, that's really a lot of torque for this segment of vehicle. Typically, this segment doesn't actually offer you a step-up engine choice. So you're looking at, in some cases, you know, like 70 more horsepower than some of the competition. That's really nice for sure. And once you give the turbo just a little second to spool up, that torque is, you know, going to push you back in your seat a little bit, actually.
Yeah, and as far as how much of a power boost that is over the other trim levels, the other ones are coming in at 147 horsepower, 132 pound-feet of torque. So 60 more pound-feet of torque and quite a bit more power as well. So it's just one of those things that's quite a big upgrade when you choose this model.
Now, if you're familiar with the last generation, you'll notice that the engines are actually carry over from the previous generation, but the transmission is not carryover for this 1.6-liter turbo. You previously had a 7-speed dual clutch. Now you have an 8-speed automatic transmission. Hyundai basically chose this, you know, for a smoother performance, more or less, and I think they have succeeded in that. You know, traditionally a dual clutch is seen as, you know, the more performance-oriented transmission option, but even when you have the inline, we're still looking at a more comfort-focused crossover.
Right.
This is not a hardcore machine by any stretch, and I think that this was a good choice to give you the more refined 8-speed automatic.
Yeah, and it is a big step up once again from that base engine setup, which instead you have a CVT. So that's certainly a big difference between them. But headed into sport mode.
Sport mode, yeah.
We'll see what this Kona is all about here in sport mode.
So obviously throttle response, goodness, throttle response is going to be more sensitive. I'm noticing the transmission is more willing to downshift. And the steering is going to increase in the heft of it. You know, like I said, this is not a hard-edged sporty crossover by any stretch of the imagination, but it does have decent body control, and with the steering being nicely weighted, overall it feels pretty nice.
And I do want to just take a second here to talk about ride quality, because we are in a very rough road just outside of Baltimore right now, and the ride quality is something that definitely I don't feel much of a difference from the limited trim that we were in earlier. I don't think they've done a ton to make the suspension like that much firmer, because like Drew said, this is an inline and it has that sporty design on the outside, but it still is a family comfort SUV first and foremost. So certainly the ride quality is still very good on this model. The seats are comfortable, nothing to complain about there. And as far as other elements that I want to talk about, for the inline, you do have optional all-wheel drive, standard front-wheel drive, and as far as the fuel economy is concerned, we are sitting at 26 miles a gallon combined as tested today. We have the all-wheel drive, and then you do also have 28 miles a gallon combined if you choose front-wheel drive.
By the way, the all-wheel drive models do have a multi-link rear suspension.
Yeah, and as far as our airball and slam dunk is concerned, we may be in Maryland, but let's go ahead and do one of our signature Kentucky elements. Drew, what is the slam dunk for this model?
Well, for the inline, I think it's going to be the overall aesthetic of this model. Hyundai really has a stylish package when it comes to this Kona, and for the inline, they dial it up to 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
This is certainly something that's going to stand out, and I think that is what the customer looking at one of these is, that's what they want. They want to stand out and still be at a pretty affordable price tag, and that's exactly what they're going to get.
Yeah, and as far as the airball is concerned, it does actually have a little bit to do with that price tag. As you'll see a little bit later when we talk about the pricing for this, it isn't actually that much cheaper than the limited trim level, so you are sacrificing quite a few luxury features and goodies over the limited, as we talked about throughout this entire review, and it's very similar in overall price. And I know you guys really like when we get our sound level reading, but unfortunately on these Baltimore roads, the speed limits are very low. Thankfully though, we did actually get our 55 mile an hour sound level reading test in the Kona Limited that we drove earlier this morning. So if you want to see that sound level reading, hop on over to that video where we talk about that very extensively, as well as compare it to some of the rivals on CarConfections.com. And lastly here, in regards to warranty, you have a 5-year 60,000 mile basic warranty. You're also going to have a 10-year 100,000 mile powertrain warranty and 3 years of complimentary maintenance. And let's talk pricing, because of course that's a very important aspect when you're looking for not the top trim level of the Kona. So as far as that's concerned, basically how they've placed this in line is it's one rung below the limited, so you're getting a lot of the features of that fully loaded model, but for a little bit less of a price point. It starts at a little over $30,000. We do have the all-wheel drive version plus a few options, and the 1335 destination. We're sitting at $33,695 for a fully loaded inline all-wheel drive. And that's where we're leaving off on this inline specific Hyundai Kona review. We wanted to show you guys what this trim level is going to give you if you're interested in buying a new Kona. Now, if you want to know all the facts and figures and specs and how it compares to the competition, all of our measurements, all of that can be found in our Hyundai Kona Limited review. So be sure to check that out before you leave our channel. Also, if you're new to the channel, we would really appreciate hitting that subscribe button down below. By subscribing, you help give us event invites like this where we can see some of the latest cars on the market. If you're already a fan and subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support, because you do make this all possible. Thank you so much for being a part of our Car Confections family. We'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.